Welcome back to another Infinite Flight tutorial. My name's Tyler, and today we're talking about the tower basics. It's important to be familiar with your command list when you first start this session so that you can easily send commands whenever it gets busy. When I'm starting tower or approach, I like to customize my map page, and the way we're going to do that is press the settings icon shown here, which allows us to add or remove things like fixes, airways, GPS approach markings, etc. So for tower, I want to declutter as much as possible to focus on aircraft that are inbound or departing. So I'm going to remove terrain, GPS approach markings, and airways. The next thing I want to talk about is infinite flight separation. The first separation is going to be departure-departure separation. This means that the leading aircraft is airborne prior to the second aircraft beginning takeoff roll. The next one is going to be arrival-arrival separation, so the leading aircraft has exited the runway prior to the trailing aircraft crossing the runway threshold. And last but not least, departure-arrival. The departure is airborne prior to the arrival crossing the runway threshold. Beginning our session, we're going to see that multiple aircraft are ready for departure, so the first one I'm going to talk to is the F-16. We're going to go ahead and clear them for takeoff. Now as we continue the tutorial, keep in mind aircraft characteristics and speed, because that's going to play a major part in whether we provide more or less separation. The next person I'm going to talk to is the citation. He's requesting to remain in the pattern, which means he wants to enter the downwind base final for touch and goes. So we're going to go and tell him to line up and wait, which means to position himself on the runway for an imminent departure as shown here. This does not mean that he is cleared for takeoff. Thinking back to my separation, I know that prior to this arrival crossing the threshold, both of my departures need to be airborne. To expedite everything a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and tell the citation that he's cleared for takeoff as soon as I see the F-16 is rolling. Now what this is anticipated separation. I know that the citation is much slower than the F-16, so I can go ahead and clear him for takeoff knowing that the F-16 will be airborne prior to the citation even beginning his takeoff roll. This allows you to move departures much quicker, keeping characteristics and speed in mind, which we're going to talk about more in this tutorial. With our little gap, we're going to go back and tell the F-16 frequency change approved, and then we're going to get back to our departures. We're going to go and tell the 777 cleared for an immediate takeoff. Now with anticipated separation in mind, I know that heavies and supers, because of their maneuverability, take much longer to actually get on the runway and begin takeoff roll. So I know that the citation is going to be airborne prior to the 777 beginning its departure. Now, when we tell an aircraft clear for immediate takeoff, that means that they're going to get on the runway with a sense of urgency and no delay to immediately depart. That means a rolling takeoff. They're not going to stop on the runway. If you've kept up with my previous videos, you know that the citation needs a sequence, so we're going to tell them number 2, traffic to follow, is on final.
Number 2, traffic to follow is on final. Number 2, traffic to follow is on final.
The next person to call me is the Cessna 208 who's holding short ready for departure. We're going to go and tell him to hold short because there's not enough space to depart him, so I want to make sure that he's holding safely behind the hold short line and that he's responded to my instructions.
Holding short runway 27, November 136 Alpha.
And we can see here that the 777 is airborne with plenty of time. So the next person I want to talk to is Hawaiian, who's called inbound. We're going to tell him to enter straight in runway 27, which means proceed directly to final, number 2, to follow our citation on left downwind. Let's get back to our departures. We have the Cessna 208 who is ready for takeoff, and we'll tell him to line up and wait as the 747 passes his position. This gets him ready for an imminent departure as soon as that 747 has cleared the runway. So how we get the 747 off the runway is by using exiting instructions. Those need to be given once the aircraft is at a safe and controlled speed. So this allows us to tell them to turn left, turn right, expedite for traffic, or even hold short or cross one of the parallel runways. As soon as I see the 747 commit to the turn and all parts are clear of the runway edge, I'll clear the Cessna 208 for departure. So if you think back to our separation, the arrival is clear of the runway prior to your departure beginning takeoff roll. So here we're clearing it for takeoff.
November 136.
As my Cessna begins takeoff, I'm going to reassess the situation, and I realize that I have no aircraft on final. My citation, who's number 1 to the runway, hasn't even turned base yet. So I take a look at my map and I realize that everything's really spaced out and I still have plenty of space for more departures. So we're going to go and tell the 737 to line up and wait. Now keeping aircraft characteristics and speed in mind, We know that a 737 is much faster than a Cessna 208, so this is a great opportunity to build in more space. You end up with a situation that looks like this as aircraft depart, and that's not good. So I've waited a few miles, and once the Cessna 208 is maybe 2 or 3 miles off departure in, I'm going to tell the 737 cleared for takeoff.
India Delta 46.
As our 737 is departing, I want to go back and make sure my arrivals are taken care of. So I noticed that Hawaiian has not been cleared to land. So we're going to tell him number 2, clear to land, and he's following the citation. So as we see on our map, Hawaiian is clear to land and we're good to go. So let's go back and talk to our 747. Now using anticipated separation that I mentioned before, heavies and supers are going to take a little bit to get on the runway, so we're going to clear them for an immediate takeoff, knowing that the 737 will be airborne and we're going to have plenty of space as you can see here. Now my only worry is will he be airborne before the arrival crosses the threshold. So let's recap a little bit. Our 737 was cleared for takeoff. Our 747 is cleared for an immediate takeoff with anticipated separation. And we also have the Citation, who's number 1, and Hawaiian, who's number 2. They've both been cleared to land and we're all set. Let's see how this plays out. Our 747 is airborne just as our Citation is about to cross the threshold. So remember, you can keep it really tight here. If all else fails, send somebody around. It's okay. As I'm waiting on my arrival, I'm going to talk to the 747 and tell him frequency change approved. Because he's departing, I don't need to worry about him. He can contact departure, approach, center, or just the nearest Unicom if none of those are available. So the next thing I want to think about is the citation and giving an exit instruction. Now remember, we don't give it as soon as they touch down, make sure they're at a safe speed, but because there's an aircraft on final, we're going to tell them to exit left and expedite for traffic on final. And as we fast forward a little bit, we see that the Citation has cleared the runway prior to Hawaiian crossing the threshold. So at this point, we can sit back and relax. Remember, tower's fun, so you get the best seat in the house to watch perfectly executed landings just like this one. Well, that's all for our Tower Basics tutorial. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or check us out on the community forum. For more videos in our training series, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.